time to take another trip down the cryptography rabbit hole and go towards the direction of zero knowledge proofs. And that is a term thrown around in blockchain quite a bit because it is being heavily used in blockchain, even though I think the proposal of the concept was back in like 1985. It definitely has a lot of modern day applications thanks to blockchain. And a lot of times you might not only hear zero knowledge proofs, but you might hear ZK snarks, and that ZK snark is a derivative of zero knowledge proof. So let's just focus on what that is to begin with. And it's basically the ability to prove that you know something without actually divulging the exact specs of what that something is, or without having to divulge the exact amount of what that something is. And this has so many use cases. I think the best way to do it is just give a couple examples, and we'll end with my absolute favorite, most interesting example of it. But the first one that I think of that's really helpful is, being able to prove that you voted without actually divulging what your vote was. Because a lot of times people are pretty open about, hey, I voted, but they don't always say who they voted for or how they voted. That can be more personal and more proprietary and more sacred and secret in nature. So again, that's why it's kind of related to cryptography and obfuscating certain secrets, certain truths that you don't want to divulge. So yeah, voting could be a great use case of it. Being able to have a proof that you voted without actually divulging what your vote was. Another good example is, again, in regards to finance and blockchain, our amount of funds. Like, let's say you need, in order to qualify for a loan or in order to qualify for a certain type of financial instrument, you need to prove that you meet sufficient funds, but you don't want that other party knowing exactly how much is in your account. So setting up a zero knowledge proof accordingly with certain arguments to be able to prove with almost certainty. That's the other thing with these, is you can never quite reach 100% certainty the same way you could without divulging what the exact thing is and all of its specifications, but you can get pretty dang close depending on how you design the proof. So again, in the case of meeting sufficient funds, you could set up a proof to prove that your account is within a certain range of funds, but without, again, giving the exact amount that's in your funds. So my favorite example of this when I was doing my research, and this is beyond blockchain, so think outside of blockchain, just the general application of zero knowledge proofs and what they can be used for, is proving whether or not a country has warheads, has nuclear warheads. Back in the day, there was even a moment where the United States convinced the Soviets to let the US scan the Soviets' nuclear warhead with a gamma ray scanner. And because the Soviets didn't want us to know like the exact specifications of their warhead, because that was private classified information for the Soviets, but they're like, okay, we can at least prove to the United States that we have one by letting them run this gamma ray scanner. So the United States runs the gamma ray scanner, and even from being able to run that gamma ray scanner, the US was able to deduce what type of warhead that they were using. So of course that upset the Soviets, and they're like, we should have never let them do that in the first place. But there are ways, the whole idea behind zero knowledge proofs is there are ways that they have come up with since then to try and understand whether or not countries actually have warheads that they say they have. So of course, a prime example for this would be North Korea, and North Korea saying, hey, we have these nuclear warheads, hey, we have these nuclear warheads, and then other countries around them saying, okay, prove it. But then North Korea, or whatever country might be spouting this, would say, oh no, but I don't want to show you what I have, because then you'll know all our secrets and what exactly we're using, and that would potentially allow you to mitigate an attack, or defend against an attack that much better. So then the US or whoever the other party says, okay, well then let's work together to come up with a zero knowledge proof arrangement that we can both agree on, that would allow you to prove that you actually have these warheads without giving away too much proprietary information, too much classified information. And so one of the examples that was given in a talk I was listening to, and this was between the US and Russia at the time, but again, you can do this with any country that's trying to prove whether or not they have warheads, is you have, think of it like an iron box. So you have an iron box that these warheads are placed into, and then you have a bot or some type of scanner that both parties agree on and hopefully have vetted for integrity and to make sure that they're not cheating this system, cheating this proof system in any way. And then the bot would go in and, you know, maybe scan for how much plutonium is around, or, you know, what specs and measurements and whatever ways you need to do to like confirm that something is a warhead. And if it is a warhead, then a little green light goes off. And if it doesn't match those qualifications that the bot was programmed with, then a red light goes off. And, you know, basically like saying, hey, yeah, this is in fact a warhead. We're not dealing with a fake little coffee machine that they just put in here. It's not a Keurig. So yeah, that would be a really interesting example of a zero knowledge proof. So at the end of the day, like in that example, the United States didn't get to see the Soviets' missile, didn't get to see the warhead, but they were able to have a reasonable amount of proof that the Russians had the missile that they said that they had. And, you know, again, you can do this with all kinds of countries, but it's an interesting concept. But think of how it might apply to your life. Like if there's something that you want to be able to prove to somebody that you know or that you have and possess without actually revealing exactly what that is, like what are some ways that both parties or multiple parties could set up a zero knowledge proof system, a ZK proof system, that would allow everyone to be confident enough that that person really does know what they know, or be confident enough that that person really does have what they have. There's so many applications. I hope you think of some good ones too. And if you do, share them with me. Like I'm curious. Like I said, there's so many that are starting to surface, and maybe there's a creative way you can think to use these too. But I hope that helps and that you know more now than you did before you watched this video. Bye. So little Miss Pinky here walked in while I was recording the video, and I thought you could totally do a zero knowledge proof with your dog. Like prove to them that you have a bone by letting them smell the bone, but don't actually let them see the bone. Anyways, this will be an outtake. Bye.